There we go. Take it away, girls.
Yeah. So this week we were reading about, let me look at the names of the chapters, but Phineas still in Goshen, and then Phineas moving on to Camp Floyd. Um, yeah, so
And
I
Chauncey.
What are the
Oh,
page numbers? Just
Chauncey.
what are the page numbers so I know?
yeah, 193 until 210, I believe.
Mhm.
193 to 210, yeah. So yeah, we have an interesting shift here because when he leaves Goshen, or I think maybe a little before he leaves, he's released as bishop. And so for a little while, his journal was being kept as both like his journal and also like the minutes of the ward, things that were going on, like the ward records. And I see the shift in the second chapter that we were reading, where it kind of goes back to being his journal. So you get more personal stories, more stories about his family, and they're moving, and less about like administration of the church and church affairs. And I'm guessing that continues for the rest of this journal as well. I don't know if there's a kind of another shift. Um, but
I
where,
think
yeah, it's a little more his personal stories.
Yeah, and I guess before this, it ended his memoirs. When he wrote that memoirs, it ended there. I was wondering when he wrote that. Did he write it like in
Hmm.
Goshen? Because it stops. And then we have this Goshen because we found this Goshen journal later. So why did he stop there? Was that because when he was writing it there? Or did he write it later and just stop there for some reason? And why stop? Or did he stop? We know a bunch of his
We
writings.
know that we lost many journalists and some sort of a fire, some of the disgruntled children.
Yeah. Yeah. So maybe there was more. I'll have to ask
Bummer.
Janet if she knows when this one was written, when that memoir was written, when he sits down to,
I bet she does.
yeah. Maybe not. Maybe it wasn't dated and they just found it. Because that's what they said about that. We found this in a pile getting ready to be burned. Pulled it
Yeah.
out because we thought it might be valuable. I'll have to ask her.
Yeah.
So is any of this after Goshen, his journal? I thought some of it was his journal, but it looks like it was mixed in with like children and grandchildren and other family members' journals as well. But was it just family members?
Oh, I mean, we'll see as I haven't read it that thoroughly after this, but I don't think it wasn't part of that memoir. It was in one book.
Mhm.
And I don't know if he had any other journals. So yeah, it might be all pieced together from letters and
Mhm.
others' journals.
Yeah.
I think that's what she did, what Janet did was put in what she had at the end there.
Yeah.
I haven't finished reading it either. I didn't read for this month because I kind of forgot it. Well, I've been busy. We were in Israel for 2 weeks, and anyway, so I'm behind.
So
Yeah.
Chauncey.
Yeah.
Chauncey
Yes.
seemed like the good
Chauncey.
guy from everybody else, except Phineas wasn't very nice. Was he just a stinker at this one time? Or is this a pattern? It sounded like everyone felt like they could graze on this land. So maybe it was just he felt like, hey, I was here grazing. I want to stay here grazing. But he was definitely stubborn about it.
Mhm.
It was really interesting. I liked in the very, very beginning of page, what is it, 193,
Mhm.
how it includes the letter that Phineas wrote to Bishop Edward Hunter, kind of about Chauncey. Like, hey, this is what's going on. And what was it? Oh, P.S. I write you not knowing what else to do. Like,
Yeah.
please help. I'm trying my best. People are coming after me, but I know what I'm doing is right. Here's what's going on. And yeah, I thought that was very interesting in his response. I've disciplined him for robbing the settlement of hay, which lawfully belongs to the citizens of Goshen, and to sell it to the army. Um, let me know if you want me to do something else. And then it looks like they had a meeting about him, and very juicy, very interesting. It was very,
Now,
yeah.
I suspect the selling of hay to the soldiers was a much more complicated thing. Brigham Young makes it sound like you sell, you're evil. I mean, don't sell to them, they're awful. But the truth
Mhm.
was, and she brings this up on one of the sidebars, that's where the money was.
Yeah.
You want
Mhm.
money that helps you live, that helps you do what you can here in Utah. They have money and they need to eat. Is it all that evil? So where Brigham is like, yes, how dare you? I could see the complication of it. Like, well,
Gotta feed my family.
yeah, what a better way to feed my family than the government that's never done anything for me anyway. I will get their money and feed my family. I mean, it's not a bad argument.
But it
And
was more than
Yeah.
that with Chauncey Webb. He was taking their hay and selling it and
yeah,
keeping
Sure.
the money. He wasn't even splitting it with them.
yeah, that's true.
And so,
Mhm.
I mean, the people were grazing on the land, and I guess they didn't have the fences to protect their own land, and so they just felt like it was all free grazing, and so he would harvest the hay and then go sell it. Was it hay or straw? I don't know.
Yeah, hey,
I think it was hay.
Hay
I
is
don't really know the difference.
well,
army.
hay has no nutrition in it. No, hay has nutrition. Straw has no nutrition.
Okay.
Mm.
So, in fact, there was a story here where uh, it was a really, really severe winter and the deer were starving. And so people would buy bales of hay and put them out for the deer. And they found the deer dead. And when they opened up their bellies, they were full of straw. So they were full, but there was no nutrition in it.
Mm. Interesting.
So it's hay that you feed the animals, and straw is, I guess, for bedding or whatever.
Yeah.
Interesting.
But
Mhm.
sometimes they call hay or straw hay too. You know, I mean, it still could have been hay because it sounds
Mhm.
like they used it to feed animals because they said the animals would graze on it.
Yeah. She says in her sidebar on the lure of quick money, many of the
Mhm.
states caught on to the idea the only real money, oops, I turned it, was in the government's hands. You know, money is a funny thing. The love of it is evil, but you need it, you know, you do need it to live. So
Mhm.
I think the economics of that were complicated.
And I don't think we have had, um, I don't know, we've had things really well in America. And we see when we went to Africa, there was, a lot of dishonesty, but people had, they didn't have anything at all. And when I was working in the office and I handled the money, and the auditor came through and he said, "Don't trust anybody." And I said, "I trust people in the office." And he said, "Don't trust anybody. We just had to excommunicate a whole bishopric." So,
The
so it's
lure of
hard for
money.
us when we have plenty
Mm,
to understand when people had absolutely nothing and were simply trying to survive.
yeah, yeah, interesting. Yeah.
It was interesting reading um the kind of meetings that they would have where they were talking about Chauncey, they were talking about Phineas back and forth a little bit. And they brought in some good gospel discussions. That made me happy. Some some doctrine getting weaved in there that I really liked. Um yeah, I was trying to find where they had a meeting about Chauncey. I know they had a lot of them.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I wonder if he felt like he had Brigham behind him. He was Brigham's friend and like, I'll do what I want. He just was really stubborn.
Hmm.
But what
Yeah.
amazed me is some of the people were against Phineas
Mm.
for his stand on it, but and they thought he disciplined I guess Chauncey Webb was pretty charismatic because he had a lot of people that were still on his side, even though he was taking their hay and selling it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He
there
had
was
a way
one.
of talking.
Yeah. There was, now this was all in a sidebar, a discourse on obedience and consecration by Brigham Young that I don't know if it looks like Phineas read that as part of their meeting and stuff. I don't know if it was given around the same time. I don't know if that was in response to um Chauncey or other things going on or just the talk that Brigham gave. But just talking about let's see, what does he say here? Just true knowledge flows through the priesthood to enable us to know how to order our lives. And just, yeah, seeking eternal principles and not, I don't know, he talks about like we're I don't know, everyone's like they call it like running around like to and fro like ants upon an anthill and um just all the work that we have to do and yeah, just
Mhm.
like exhorted them to like focus on, I guess, eternal things.
This reminded me of our state, an older state president. Um, he talked about the women flying, flying, uh, flying down the hill with their hair on fire. And every time I'm in a hurry and I'm late for something and I'm hurrying, I think of that. I'm flying down the hill with my hair on fire. But it's, we are busy. We're running our kids here and there. I mean, I'm not anymore doing that, but we need to take time for those important things too. And my husband reminded him that he had said that. He said, I'm so embarrassed. My wife gave me a lot of trouble for saying that.
Makes women sound like they're just hysterical.
Well, I feel that way. I mean, we live up on the mountain and, we're running down the hill we got to do this, we got to do that. And we're just focused so much on what we have to do. And we're always in a hurry.
We're in the thick of thin things.
Yeah.
What's really important.
But we don't have to milk the cows and harvest the vegetables and do everything we did.
Just to survive. Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty remarkable to start talking about obedience and consecration, high level society things and personal morality when you are barely subsisting. That's really remarkable.
Yeah.
I think that's what makes the pioneers really remarkable. Subsisting didn't just become, every man for himself, you got to do what you got to do. That they're still talking about these high principles of community and consecration and serving God. And we hope we have potatoes to last us the week. Just really, that's really remarkable and a lot of foresight.
Mhm. The level of organization that they had, like amongst their communities, voting on different things. Like I was just reading, oh no, the page. What's the page? Just about how they voted on building a new schoolhouse and how everyone's gonna help chip in for it, whether you have people going to the schoolhouse or not, and how they all agreed on that, and kind of how, and I mean, we've seen that throughout these chapters and throughout the minute notes, whether it's minutes about people bashing Phineas or Chauncey or hey or your chickens are coming in my, whatever it is. It is very, very organized, and whether it's chaotic or structured, how they all, I just think it's remarkable how they all come together as a community to kind of make these decisions together. And It could not have been easy. And yeah, especially having to work together with people you might not agree with, but he's your bishop, so what are you going to do about it? Sort of tricky situations. But it always impresses me reading over minute notes and stuff like that, that whether they're all coming together to bash somebody or chastise somebody, or let's come together and build a schoolhouse, figure out irrigation, different, hey, you cheated me out of this mill or whatever it was, different things like that, how they're able to come together as a community. I think it's remarkable and something we don't really see too much of these days, but we also have different circumstances these days. So, yeah, I thought that was pretty neat.
Yeah, just when it sounded like, at least from this, I was going to compare it to the other book we wrote about Goshen, if there are more notes. It seems like everything just got good, and then they bring in the new bishop. But the book made me think they brought in a new bishop because things weren't so good. But maybe that's how he wraps it up neatly. And I've done my part. I've told people. And then when he moved on to the ranch.
Oh, the fire.
Oh, the fire.
Oh,
Because at first I thought, okay, he owns a ranch and he's taking in work, making money, like he's using his resources to make, this is how you become prosperous. And at one point they said he had a lot of assets. They listed a couple $1,000s or something. And I thought, good, he's finally coming into his own. And then his children are like, yeah, we all had to help barefoot. And it sounds like he was never ahead. And then the fire wipes out so much. Like, Phineas. Like 2 steps forward, 1 step backward. That seems to be Phineas. Just when he's getting good, he moves later to Star Valley, Wyoming, he was well off from Bear Lake, brings all this cattle with him. He split up his inheritance to his wives and their kids. And the wife's one kid got a lot and he's good to go. And the other's got some, and he takes a lot. And the first winter there, all but 7 cows were killed. It's just like, I'm finally fairly, got some prosperity. And then and they're taken and washed the rest of his life. I think he does some grist mill stuff, but it's just like financial comfort was never going to be your thing, Phineas.
He inherited money from Anne Eliza's father when he died, and he went to California and collected it in gold, I believe. And so he's doing really well for a while. I mean, when he got that sometime.
Yeah, that's interesting. That Daddy Baker must have done well in the gold fields. I don't know if he found gold or made money from people who were there finding gold.
Well, the people that went to California for the gold rush, most of them did not make any money on the gold. It was the people that supplied the prospectors with equipment that made money.
Yeah. Yeah, that was interesting.
I thought it was interesting that John Young said in his talk that, yeah, your bishop probably kicked people out of the church too frequently.
Yeah. I
have stated some of them, but
yeah, I have another ancestor who was similar. They were over in England, Scotland. Same thing. They said, we're going to do this. And he voiced a dissent. I don't think we should do this. Are you saying that's it? You're out. He gets excommunicated. And I think there was a bit of control issues early on, How much should we disagree with our leaders? Because they talked about that here. Like, look, and it's a good way to have a community to not disagree, to allow one to lead, and we're gonna, to a point, like maybe say your piece, but then we're gonna follow. It's a good way to keep the community together. And our cultural history has kind of been that, don't criticize. And so maybe they were heavy-handed with the punishments. If you did, you're out. That's it. You're out too. And maybe that has settled down to not being such the case now. It was a bit too much.
I notice in these chapters, there's more information, even little sidebars about the kids. Harriet getting married and the kids talking about riding the horses and this, a little bit more about the children, which was interesting.
Yeah, I like that.
Finally.
I think this is
14.
from their memoirs and their letters and things. We get more of that detail.
His daughter was 14, marrying a 25-year-old school teacher. But I guess that was common. I mean, Joseph Smith has taken a lot of criticism for marrying a 14-year-old.
I read something once about ages at marriage. The farther you were toward the frontier, the younger they got, not Mormon or non-Mormon. So this wasn't just a Mormon thing. The frontier just sort of bred that, like, you got to grow up and get going, and you succeeded more in your numbers. So if you could pair up and go settle somewhere, you're more likely to do well because you've got some division of labor. So it meant very early. There was someone at 13, 14, this article I read that was not LDS, that her diary said, so I was getting to be 13 thinking it was time to marry. So I go to find, so I found someone, he needed to go out on the claim, when you like claim an area and needed someone to cook for him. So 3 weeks later, we were married and I'm off to cooking for him. And but he's got a need, and she felt she had a need at that age, and that's just what you did.
There you go.
Decimates your youth program, all the 14-year-olds. Like, God. But yeah, Harriet.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a bunch to share about Harriet, unless you guys want to. I know I mentioned to my girls.
Well, it sounds like from here that she wrote a journal, because it said something like, this is an excerpt from her autobiography. It was one of the little sidebars.
Oh yeah, Anne had to go. Yeah.
Page 197.
I got to know Harriet, maybe Alice remembers, from Annalisa's journals. She was widowed, young, like 50, 45 or 50. And she went back, took her children back to Garden City and lived near Annalisa and was the postmistress there. And she takes care of Annalisa as she's in her last days. And Annalisa just, Harriet is so kind. She's just so kind and helpful and relies on her so much till she dies. So I read some about Harriet, and she's just a rock star in my book. 14, married to a 25-year-old, and she was a polygamous wife. So this was not his first marriage. He was married. And I mean, there are things about where they go. I think they went to Bear Lake early, and then they end up going to Mexico. And I don't know how many wives he had, 2 or 3 at least. And then he died young. I mean, he was a little older. He was 10 years older than her, but she decides to take her children back to her mom's. And I'm going to read some from her. This I got on Family Search. Let's see. She writes about this journey. She, by herself, in her mid-40s, with the children and a young one, take this treacherous journey up, through Arizona and up southern Utah to get to northern Utah. Let's see if I can find where it is. Okay, this is where it is. 1884. 1884. We sold our cow for $40, started on the 20th day of April, 1884. Let me back up a little, see where her husband died. Her husband's postmaster in Arizona. That's what it was. Pimo, Arizona, not Mexico. Right? Wasn't she in Mexico too, Allison?
Phoebe?
Oh, that
I
was
think it was
Mexico.
Phoebe went to Mexico, yeah.
You're right. Harriet just made it to Arizona, and then she came back. Hired help, heavy to me. He died after a long illness in 1883, her husband, at 49. So she was 39. Wow. This was a heavy blow to me. I was left alone with 5 small children, the oldest being a boy of 13. I was then appointed postmaster and kept it nearly a year, trying hard to get out of debt, trying to collect from the people that owed us, but they would not pay me. If I could have collected, I could have paid every dollar I owed and had $400 left. I turned the books over to my creditors in the spring of 1844, and they collected, but I never did get my 400. But that's a little Phineas sound, isn't it? Like, they still, I still didn't make out right. So for oldest now, this was 4 years later, would have been 17. I was happy to know I was out of debt, decided to come back to my parents and friends in Utah. I resigned the post office and prepared for a long journey, although I didn't know how we could go, for we had no money to get on the train, which was 44 miles from Pimo. And there was no company going that spring, but we packed up our wagon, was all ready to start, when a young man came along and said, I will drive your team and furnish my own food if you will haul me and my bedding. He was from Utah and was there on a visit, and his name was James McClellan. Thus, the way was opened for us to come. She also has that faith of Phineas, feeling like, I go ahead and there'll be a way. My son sold our cow for $40. We started 1884. We traveled 4 days on the Mogollon Mountains. We came to the Black River, which is very deep. As the ferry boat was on the other side and the boys tried to swim a horse across, but the horses and mules all refused to go, so we camped there 4 days waiting for help. About 10 o'clock on the 4th morning, we saw 2 soldiers coming at the head of 500 Indians who were moving to another reservation. One Indian, who was an excellent swimmer, swam the river and brought the boat back, and then they helped us across. We traveled on 10 miles to Fort Apache and camped near the fort that night. And the next morning, we traveled on to Woodruff on the head of the Little Colorado, where my oldest daughter lived, and here we visited a few days. Then leaving her, we started on again, and I did not see her for 10 years after. If her oldest son was 17, her oldest daughter probably followed in her footsteps and left home at 14 or 15. Then we came to the Holbrook Railroad Station. We drove a stream of water and stopped to let our horses drink. When we tried to start again, the team could not pull the wagon out, for the bottom of the stream proved to be quicksand. And in trying to get out, we broke the wagon tongue. The boys rushed to a far nearby and got the farmer's team and pulled the wagon out backward. The young men then went to the station to see if he could get a wagon tongue. There was only one tongue. The wheels broke. I'm trying to get to this part where her little girl falls out of the wagon. Oh, we traveled for a long time, began to meet people crossing Colorado. I watched okay. I think this is where there was only a small rowboat to cross this river. The women rowed, and my son held to the halter rope, and the horses had to swim. They took the boat upstream about a half mile and started across, but the river was so rough and pitching and tumbling, timbers frightening the first horse so badly that he snorted, leaped, plunged, and floundered, and pulled the boat downstream even with the wagon. I watched all this take place way out in the middle of the river and was so frightened it made me feel sick, but I went out a little way from the wagon where I could not see them in those angry waters. And here I earnestly prayed to Father in heaven to help us cross this river in safety and be permitted to carry on our duty to him. When I arose and went back to the wagon, I saw my son on the other side of the river, holding his horse by the rope and swimming his hat to me. One fine large horse refused to swim and almost drowned. The river had calmed down, and we sat down to eat. The ferryman said, do you notice how this river has become? I've lived here 20 years and I can't account for it. It had become calm, I guess. I can't account for it, but I knew it was why We took the wagon apart and crossed the river 9 times in moving our little outfit. So these river crossings. Okay, I want to find one place. She says, oh, here it is. We started on the next day while traveling along a hillside. The upper front wheel of the wagon struck a large rock and the lower one dropped into a hole. It gave such a sudden jolt that it threw my 3-year-old baby girl out over the ground, the grot wheel, onto a sharp rock, and my 14-year-old boy was thrown over her onto the ground. It did not hurt the boy, but the baby lay so still, and while I stopped the team and jumped out, she did not make a sound. Her brother had lifted her and ran to me with her in his arms. Her head was drooping down and her face covered with blood. Oh my gosh, I hate her babies. Can't do the babies. I took her in my arms and ran to a little stream where I bathed her face in the cold water. I found it had put a gash in her cheek through which I could see her teeth. Oh, it had stunned her and she was sometime coming to herself. It all came so sudden and was so excited. I hardly realized anything, only to try and bring her out of danger. When she opened her eyes and looked at me and began to moan, I began to shake and tremble, became so weak I fairly tottered, laid her on her bedding in the wagon. I then fell on my knees and thanked the Lord with all my soul that he had spared her life. But she could not raise her little head again that day. Ah, my goodness. But she was much better the next morning. July 4th, we reached our old home at Holden, Utah. My husband's brothers were there. Our people were happy to have us back. Oh, that story with babies flying and getting stuck in rivers. And wow, she was plucky, to make that journey. Yeah. Anyway, that's when she moved to Garden City and was made postmaster there. So I love Harriet. I think she's a rock star. Yeah, it doesn't sound like she married again either.
On Family Search, she only has one husband.
Yeah. Yep. So those young brides, those young wives there in Utah, they went through a lot. I just read a cool book. If any of you think polygamy is cool, like I do, a cool book called Polygamous Wives Writing Club. And the author took 29 journals of different polygamous wives and put them together as if they were in a writing club. They didn't know each other, but sort of comparing their journals to each other. And it was fascinating. I highly recommend it if you like that subject. Just the variety of experiences too. It wasn't all one thing. She was trying to find some commonalities, like how well did this go? How well did who had a good time of it? I think she concluded all hard. All hard, but all motivated by this just sense of we're doing the will of God. So we plug on. Anyway, good volume. What's that? You're muted, Jennifer.
Sorry, my neighbor was weed whipping and I didn't want anybody to hear it. In my mind, there's no doubt that without polygamy, the LDS church wouldn't be where it is today. That there was a functional reason for it. I mean, it's just so clear to me when I look at the history that there was a reason for it.
Yeah, I was just reading this week some about the Shakers, and how they didn't believe in sex.
Yes.
Marriage, sex, and there are 2 Shakers left in the world today.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, without we did just the opposite. Oh, we believe in it. And yeah, it numbers wise. And when you think of being all in something like a religion, those who sacrifice the most for it, those who are all in, I mean, it's just solidified this foundation.
Yes.
Foundational numbers and like feeling of the strength of it. Yeah, polygamy. And so how could you, if you had been one in it, it was hard, and you just have this like, it just has to be faith. You couldn't even have this big picture. Oh, well, I see how this is all going to work out well, and my sacrifice is going to be for this greater.
Right.
You couldn't even at the time. It's just faith. Yeah. What else did we read about?
I was just looking at some of the pictures of Harriet on Family Search, and to see if there was a scar from having her face.
Now that was her daughter.
Her
That was
daughter.
her 3-year-old.
Oh, it was whose daughter?
Harriet's daughter.
Right, right. So I would think it would probably be her youngest.
Yeah.
So I was just looking at, I think this is her married picture. I'll share it. Oh, I have to get permission to share it.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
Yeah, probably Eunice. Is that the youngest one?
Yeah, this is Eunice. But it looks to me like she had a wandering eye
Oh,
and maybe some scarring there.
that could have been from that.
Wow.
That's, yeah, I think that's from her wedding photo. But her older pictures don't look so bad. Here's one with her family.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I wonder, yeah, I don't know. But that picture of her wedding reminded me of what, now I gotta find, let's see, stop sharing. Wasn't it, oh, what's his name? That wrote Huck Finn. I have a mental block.
Mark Twain.
Wasn't it Mark? Didn't he write something about the Mormons? No, wait a minute.
Wasn't very flattering. He didn't think
He said the Book of Mormon was what was it? The most boring book. I can't remember the exact quote, but he said it was like a really boring book. And
chloroform.
Things have been
It was like chloroform on with
Paper.
words or something. Yeah.
out of the things that have been said about the Book of Mormon, that's pretty tame. Like,
I think what he said about the wives, he said, I've been to Utah and I've seen those women, and anyone would take more than one out of he said he said they ought to be rewarded for taking more than one of them. I know what they look like.
So rude. Here's another picture of her. Wait, is that it? Yeah. Are you seeing that picture?
Yeah,
yeah.
when she
Yeah,
was a baby.
Would have been her. I could see maybe the side of her face.
Yeah, I wonder, because some of the pictures, it looks like she turns a certain side to the face. And even, sometimes pictures can be inverted, so you can think you're seeing the one side when you're not. But
Yeah.
it seems like she tried to turn her face certain ways.
This would have been about her age, I think. 3 when that happened.
I would think that it would have to be the baby, because she talked about her baby and her husband was gone.
Yeah. It looks like her baby was born the year her husband died.
No.
1914. He died in, oh wait, I'm looking at the wrong one.
1880. She was born in December of 80.
Yeah.
He died
He died in 83, according to this record. He died in,
I thought
talking about William Randolph Teeples.
Yeah. Harriet's life sketch said 80. Oh yeah, 83. You're right. He died 83. So she was 3 when he died. She would have been 7 when she took the trip, the youngest. So maybe that picture was before the accident. She
Yeah.
was.
Oh, the little
Although when
baby.
she said, I was holding my 3-year-old. Didn't she say that? So I don't know. I don't know how it works.
I don't know, but the Alice Teeples is quite pretty.
Older daughter. Yeah, here's a picture of oh, Harriet. That was a tough life. I think this would have been when she was in around when Annalisa's diary, because she even mentions this company coming through to take pictures. I like that. It's just such a harsh look. Seems like
Well, they
Correct.
had harsh looks because they had to leave the camera lens open for a long time, and so you could not move. So they didn't smile, and they had to hold perfectly still to get a
Oh,
clear.
Harriet.
yeah, William's second wife. Are you seeing that other
Mhm.
picture?
Yeah.
Yeah. Kind Harriet.
It seemed like many of them did not marry for love. They married for
Practicality or availability.
availability, duty. I don't know.
Yeah.
But in Bruce's, my husband's grandmother's journal, she had several men propose to her, but they were polygamous, and she just wasn't interested. But they just kept asking her and asking her. She did marry a man who was not a polygamist, and he said to her one day, "Well, what do you think about me taking another wife?" And she said, "Okay, but I get to choose her, and it's going to be this person." He said, "Never mind. I think I'll just keep one wife."
Oh, that's interesting. I did note from that book about the journals that it seems like those who could organize it well, it went better.
Mhm.
Like they talk about some who the first wife like took it in hand. Okay, welcome to the family. Here's what we're doing, and we're organized, and we'll split up this way, and we'll do it. Okay, everyone knew what was expected of them. I guess if you can keep the emotions out of it, it helped a lot. But if we were just like more run it like a business, then it went well. And then it had the positives. Someone talked about, oh, there were positives to polygamy, like you could get more done. And one woman went back east to become a midwife and have a career. So she brought that skill back. She could do that because the other wives watched her kids. So you could share. It seemed like the challenges far outweighed the benefits. Like those who really enjoyed those benefits were fewer because you had to get past all the emotions and personalities. But if you did, if you could just run it like a business, then it worked.
I'm certainly grateful that I was able to marry for love. But my brother-in-law's parents were older, and he went up to her and he said, we're both getting older, and why don't we just kind of make a business deal, get married, have some children, and I mean, and they agreed, and they had a very successful marriage, and they had children.
I think in the history of the world, love marriages are the far minority. So some people made it work somehow, those arrangements.
Brother-in-law. Which brother-in-law was that now?
That's Scott Calder.
Okay.
Yeah, and one thing in the book stood out to me. They said, it seems like, this is a general statement, but polygamy was about as successful a marriage arrangement as marriages, as monogamy. You've got good marriages, you got not good, you got really crummy, you got really manipulative and abusive marriages.
I've always felt like marriage is a risk because people change. People aren't what you expect. And sometimes before you're married, you don't know all the little quirky things, and it's something you do have to work at if you want to succeed.
Yeah.
So I wonder, I mean, arranged marriage, I always thought, oh, those poor Jewish people that had to have their arranged, and they still do it in India and other places, they arrange marriage. And I think their success rate is better than marrying for love.
Mhm.
I have a friend who married an Indian and she lived in India for a while. And she said because expectations are set up front. For love marriages, the expectation might be it's all going to be so rosy all the time. And that's not realistic either. So maybe an arranged marriage have more realistic expectations right up front and roles and responsibility. You take care of this. She said the still marriages don't work in the office because one party's pooping out on their role. And if you have roles set and you carry them out, guess what? It works with either system. So maybe going into it a little more with the roles and expectations, realistic.
So Nan, what do you know about WW and Jenny Clyde? Did they have a love match, or do you know?
I think it was a desperation match.
That's what I was wondering. So our
Yeah, go ahead.
our grandparents, our grandmother died when she was 33 years old from breast cancer. And Jenny, the sister, moved in to take care of the kids, and I don't know how long, but then pretty soon Wilford married Jenny, and they had 2 more kids. So they had 4, and then they had 2 more together. So, but I kind of heard that it was sort of like, Wilford, if I'm going to take care of your kids, we have to get married because it doesn't look good for me to be just staying here.
Well, he was on the road all the time. And so she did move in and took care of the kids. And of course, she loved him already. She had had an opportunity to marry a man who was going to go back east to go to school to become a doctor. And it was right at the Spanish flu time with an epidemic. And she stayed back. She said, I can't leave my family right now. There's nobody to take care of them but me. I've got to nurse them because they're all sick with the flu. And I think members to that flu. And so he said, well, if you don't come with me, then goodbye, it's over. And so he left. And then she just, when my grandmother died, which was her older sister, my grandfather said, line me up. I need to find a wife for my children. And so she lined him up, and he'd say, I don't like her. No, that one's no good. Line me up again. And she said, finally, forget it. I'm not going to line you up anymore. And then he asked her to marry him.
I didn't hear that part of the story. That's interesting.
I think it was desperation, but she was a good person, and they had a successful marriage. I think they enjoyed each other. And
but Wilford said one time, if anyone had ever told me that I'd be married to Jenny in such and such amount of time, I never would have believed him.
she was a prankster, and she used to hide and pop out when he was dating Henrietta, our grandmother. And yeah, he would have probably never
Like
believed.
a pesky little sister, right?
Wow. Wait, she was Henrietta's sister?
Henrietta and Jenny
Jenny
were
and Henrietta.
sisters.
Oh, so he married his former wife's sister.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
my mom was raised by her aunt, and she didn't want them to forget their mother, so she taught them to call her Aunt Jen. And then when she had her own kids, she was Mom, but it was very confusing for her own kids to have them call her something different. But
My brother said he was playing with our cousin. We always figured they were all. I mean, we did never separate Aunt Jen as kids. I didn't. I always called her Grandma, but my brother sometimes would call her Grandma, and sometimes he'd call her Aunt Jen. And one day he was playing with our cousin Ray, who was a literal descendant of Jenny, and he said he said something, Aunt Jen, can I have something? And then Ray said, Aunt Jen, and she turned around and she said, I am not your Aunt Jen. I am your mother. I'm your grandmother. I'm your grandmother. She's got that right. You're not calling me Aunt Jen.
it was okay for the ones that were Henrietta's children to call her that.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I always called her grandma too, but I was one of the young ones.
Yeah. Fixed food for us, but that's what we were talking about the other day, is everybody remembers eating at her table.
But never like not, I mean, like for my kids, when their children have a birthday, I take them out and the child take them out, let them pick out a present, take them for a treat or a lunch or something. And we try and do that with every grandchild, even though it's getting problematic a little bit. But you know, I don't really have any of those type of memories with my grandma. It was children were kind of to be seen but not heard or whatever. I don't know, a little
Yeah,
bit.
it was a different era. They were they didn't want to dote on children. You don't compliment them because that will make them too
Proud.
proud and things like that. I mean, it was a very Victorian era. Catherine and I had were together this week and talking and about how Victorian they were. And I have a sister-in-law who they went to visit them and she got up and hugged him. You don't touch him. I mean, nobody touches him.
But he liked it.
He loved her. But she was the only one I knew that ever gave him a hug. He just lived a very formal life. He thought if people were a little bit afraid of him, it made him it was respectful.
Yeah.
Showing, and so he liked people to be just a little bit afraid of him.
Interesting.
But yeah, it was a different era because in Bruce's, I've been scanning history letters and in Bruce's side of the family, his father's father never gave them a compliment, never. And Bruce's father wrote in his letter, if I could just please him one time. And it was sad, but and his father's brother hated his father, just hated him. But I think it was how they were reared. They were reared to be very staunch, very formal.
Mhm.
You just don't show emotions and you don't praise people because it'll make them weak. So
Oh, interesting.
I raised a good family. I mean, especially Grandpa Clyde, he raised a great family and had many wonderful grandchildren, and many of them have great families. Most of them have great families. And so,
well, Uncle Bill didn't get along with Jenny, so Bill went to live with Wilfred's mother.
oh,
They didn't get along.
Annie Henrietta. No, Wilford's mother.
Wilfred's mother, Nora Jane
Yeah.
Johnson.
Lenora, yeah. What was it? Yeah, Lenora Jane Johnson, that's right.
Yeah, Bill didn't, but I think Bill was ADHD or dyslexic or something.
Yeah, he was a little different.
And they didn't know how to deal with him. They just thought he was lazy and they couldn't control him. And his parents, or Jenny and Wilfred, went to Salt Lake one day, and Bill took their car and picked up his girlfriend and went and got married.
Oh, really? How many
Sounds
kids?
like an ADHD thing to do.
Wow.
What'd you say, Catherine?
Did Hazel and Uncle Bill have 8 children?
Yeah,
more?
he had a big family, 8 children, I think. But Bill's posterity are really bitter toward the family.
All of them?
Maybe not all of them, but
Like,
Dale
very
Dale
nice.
certainly was, and Dale said we couldn't do anything right. He said we would be over at their house and kids would be running through the house and he'd say, Bill, you've got to control your children. And Bill would say, my children are sitting right here on the steps.
Oh,
They were always on top of him. It was always his fault. That's what Dale told me.
that's too bad.
But we did run through the house because we slammed the door on Mary and she ran through the glass door.
Oh,
Oh, no.
Actually, Susan did it. Susan slammed the door.
Did you get cut?
I don't remember. I just remember that it was a panel door. One of the panels broke,
Hmm.
and Mary was about a year and a half younger than we were, and we were trying to get away from her, being really rude.
Dean,
Kids.
yeah.
Well, I think we're all done with Goshen. I think he's done. He's out of
Tell me what
Goshen.
you know about Camp Floyd really quick before we get off.
Yeah. Yeah. What?
Do we know anything about Camp Floyd other than that he
Oh.
was there for 3 or 4 months, or maybe we figured maybe 8 or 9 months.
I don't know.
I didn't read it, so I was going to go read the chapters. Tell me the chapters again. 193 to
210.
210.
So
And
wasn't
he
Camp
talks
Floyd
about-
where the soldiers settled?
Yeah.
yeah, but he went and lived there for a bit.
Sometime in 1863, after most of the U.S. Army had left, he was called to move to the Army camp in Cedar Valley, possibly to help normalize the abandoned camp and restore public property as farmland. Several men were also called to the Elmer camp to help purchase for the church equipment, animals sold. Phineas may have been closing up his business at the ranch. So sounds like they had some cleaning up to do after the Army left. Closing up his business, April, May 63. They left. And we're just getting this from his kids. In the spring of 62, David Savage, Amanda's father, wrote that he was called there too. It was a great blessing to Amanda. Oh, I really loved this part about Amanda because Phineas didn't write anything about his wife or kids or anything. So I do love it when we get one of these details. Amanda was expecting babies, her twins, in 63. He was called to help. So she gave birth to these twins that she named, to make genealogy confusing, Rosalie and Rosalia.
Yeah.
And I'll bet those girls get combined all the time. Same birthday, same parents, same names. They were premature. Amanda was sick. She was totally deaf for weeks. It's interesting. Her babies were a month old. The one died. Amanda maintained her life, was saved by the care of her family, especially her half-sister, Mary. And then they brought Amanda over to Bear Lake.
That they named the 2 babies the same thing?
With an A or an E.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
And Mary Rosalia Cook was the one that lived.
Mhm.
Okay.
She was her only daughter that lived. But where does it talk about her?
What page was that on about Phineas? And
This was at the end at 2.
Yeah.
209 and 210.
10.
I
Amanda.
wanted to find out everything I could because we're going to Camp Floyd next week on a ride. And he wanted to know everything he could about it.
I think there's a museum left. The only building left from the camp is a little museum or something.
Yeah.
I thought that would be fun to see too.
Yeah, we're gonna go see that. So
Yeah.
Yeah, but it looks like the last page there, 209, has a quotation from Mary Rosalia's journal
Which
saying,
is,
I was,
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, that her journal is amazing.
Yeah.
She's my husband's great grandmother, and there's so much in there. It's astonishing. Go ahead.
No, yeah, I was just going to read it. She says, I was one of the twin sisters born on November 12, 1863. My sister died when she was 1 month old, and my mother was very ill all winter. She's often told me that I owed my life to the devotion and care of Amanda's half-sister, Aunt Mary Wilcox, who was then only a girl of 15 years. Married 2 years later at Paris, Idaho, to John Dingham Wilcox. She cared for me and for Mother as she lay ill on a straw tick on the floor in front of the fireplace.
Yeah, she goes on. Father was Phineas Wolcott Cook, a fine carpenter, millwright. He worked on the public works in Salt Lake for many years. Mother was Amanda Polly Savage, a little blonde woman who had a great love for beautiful dishes and flowers, and who, wherever she went, managed to have a nice collection of both. Her father was one of the first Pony Express riders. That's interesting. And freighters to California, and spoke the Indian language so fluently he was a great friend of the red man, who always referred to my mother as Savage's papoose. Is that nice?
Mhm.
Finally sent my father to Bear Lake to start mills and settlement there when I was 8 months old. My mother took me from my crib, made of birch fastened with rawhide, packed our few belongings, and joined my father, in the new valley.
Wow.
I thought that was a nice personal touch. We don't often little blonde ladies and their flowers and dishes, and Phineas didn't give us those details.
Yeah, you know that's written by a woman.
It
Need
looks
to go
like
on
only
the,
two.
catch up on the reading. That sounds interesting.
It
Yeah,
looks like only 2 of her children made it to adulthood. Is that right?
of Amanda's, yeah, that Rosalia and David
Mhm.
Savage. I think she had 2 that died, the twin, and I think another boy.
Yeah, Joseph Savage Cook was died the same year he was born.
Yeah. And she doted on those that is somebody said something I read that, oh, they were much loved children.
Aw.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I was reading one journal on Family Search, and it said, well, we just had another girl. Or maybe I said this before. Like, how I just need boys. I need boys. And we had another girl.
Hey.
I need boys to help me on the farm. What good is a girl?
So then Nan had
Negative.
7 boys, right? And 1 girl. You would have been really in heaven back if you'd been born back then and you'd help on the farm.
Yeah. So maybe we'll get some more personal details in the coming chapters. We have other sources.
All right. Well, this was fun.
How
Yeah.
far are we supposed to read?
Yeah, what's next, Catherine? How far should
Yeah,
we-
let me look at the chapters. So our next meeting, we won't meet next month because it'll be July 5th, so 4th of July weekend. But we'll meet on August 2nd. And then the next chapters, let's see, I think we'll just do the next one because it looks kind of like a long, well, maybe we'll do the next 2 because we have 2 months. So 1863 to 65, Called to Bear Lake, and then the first chapter of Swan Creek. So from pages 211 to 238.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we'll read those 2, yeah.
Great.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good to see you all.
Yeah, you
Thank
too.
you.
Have a good weekend. We'll see you all later.
Mhm.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.